This series of videos is about my life, my story, my path to truth in God. And I'm going to get into all the spiritual stuff, but I want to get the flesh stuff out of the way first. I said I would say everything, so I'm going to talk about my flesh. As Paul said, if anybody else can glory in the flesh, so can I. You suffer fools gladly, suffer me as a fool, that kind of stuff. But I think that the flesh part is important. I would have never said this stuff before. And if it was pride, I would have said this kind of stuff all the time. And my life stresses me out looking back on it. It seems like it's not even possible to have done all these different things and live this life. But my whole life was it was definitely the hand of God. He knew who I was, I guess, and what I would say. But all I ever do is tell the spiritual stuff, and I think people think that I can't relate and that I don't know things, and they do know things. So I'm going to talk about my flesh in this video and get it all out the way because I don't want to pepper the spirituality by adding the flesh in as I went along. So I'm just going to talk about my flesh. And in the next videos, I'll talk about the spiritual parts. But I think that God sent me everywhere in all these different places and all these different people, and to do all these things so that I could understand. I was born in Ohio, and my dad left whenever I was 1 year old. And then my mom got with my stepdad whenever I was around 5 or 6, I think. My stepdad seemed nice at first. He was an ex-Marine of 15 years. He was abusive. He used to punch us instead of spank us. He used to literally punch us in the ass. And we tried to tell Mom about it at first. She didn't believe it at first. Then one day he locked his son, my younger brother, in a room, started cocking his shotgun. My mom's standing outside the door screaming for him to let her in. That's the kind of person he was. We had the biggest yard in the whole place. We weren't allowed to go. We weren't allowed to be in our yard. We were never allowed to go outside. And if we were only allowed in one little portion of our yard. Like every single thing he did was strict and mean. And just because we would annoy him, it didn't really do anything bad, but annoy him. He'd send us to our room without food. And sometimes he would even order pizza so we could hear the pizza guy come and not have any dinner, just to be a dick. He was abusive and all, blah, blah, blah. Eventually they split up after they had split up and got back together, split up, got back together. I had straight A's the whole time, I was a straight A student or whatever, perfect grades whenever you're that young. And but then after switching schools so many times and doing the same curriculum here as I was doing here, I already knew it. And then never knowing which school I was going to go to, I went from straight A's to straight F's. So by the time I was in 4th grade, I started getting straight F's. Straight A's in 3rd grade, straight F's in 4th grade. And I got straight F's until the day that I left school. So, but they used to place you back then. Now they don't do that. They'll actually hold you back. But back then they used to just place you. It didn't matter what your grades were. They'd send you to the next grade. I started kindergarten whenever I was 4 years old. So, because my birthday's in September. So I was turning 5. Started kindergarten whenever I was 4, so I was a little bit younger than some and a lot younger than most. And in 2nd grade, even though I had straight A's, they held me back because I had anger issues because of my stepdad and going back and forth for years like that. So they held me back a year so that I could be with people my own age. Didn't really help much. Whenever I was about 6 or 7 years old, I realized something. I realized that if you're a human and they're a human, and if they can do it, you can do it. So I started getting talented. I started wanting to learn everything, and I stopped watching so much TV. I remember the day I was watching cartoons, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go out and learn a front handspring, because my friend could do it, and I couldn't. So I went outside and did that until I learned it, because I realized unless somebody's double jointed or has 3 arms, if they can do it, why can't I? Also, with my stepdad, we weren't allowed to have friends. We lived in an apartment complex, and we couldn't even go next door or across the walk to see our friends. Every now and then our mom would let us while he was at work, but if he found out about it, everybody in the house was in trouble. So I was like the fastest kid in my grade back then, and until this colored girl came from a different school, and then she beat me. That was sad. But I was just always trying to learn stuff and always doing stuff. Eventually my stepdad dies, we move in with my grandmother. And they called my grandmother's house the Lux Hotel because she always allowed anybody in. Sometimes I lived there with 13 other people. The house was pretty big. There was 4 rooms upstairs and 3 rooms downstairs. Bedrooms. And then another one that we made into a bedroom, so 8 bedrooms altogether. But we were poor people, and we had a wood stove, and we would have to section off the house because we didn't have enough money for heat. So we'd section off the house, and everybody would have to sleep in the living room, and if you wanted to sleep in a different room, which I did many times in a sleeping bag with my Carhartts on and such. You wake up and the water in your room's completely frozen solid. You know, we lived in Ohio, so. The house used to be a body shop and all my family were mechanics, and so there was like 17 broken down cars in our yard at one point. My grandfather trained professional boxers. I lived with my uncles who were boxers and street fighters and just brawlers all together. My whole family were fighters, and their sons were into martial arts and whatnot. We took Shorin-ryu and combat jiu-jitsu. We used sais and nunchucks and swords and 6-foot staffs and throwing stars and throwing knives. Got pretty good with a lot of those. And we'd hang out with our cousins, you know, they were the long haired, listening to like Motley Crue and Skid Row and everything, and then Alice in Chains and all that, and they'd be like headbanging going down the road with their long hair, punching each other in the car, thinking that was funny. Always smoking weed, you know. We had that 80 book of homemade bombs. We made a lot of those bombs. We got away with a lot. I mean, we made bombs out there. We made napalm and stuff like that. And you had different cousins, you know. Then you got my one cousin who first went to prison, I think, whenever he was 16. No, maybe he was 12. Whenever he stole a car, Grand Theft Auto. And he just kept going back and forth out of prison. So he'd live with us, then he'd go back to prison, live with us, go back to prison. And we just did a lot of different stuff. I mean, we used to lay down in black clothes. My cousins taught us this whenever we were young. Don't know why this seems fun. It seems rude to me now, and I wish that it never happened. But we'd lay down in the ditch and like take handfuls of rocks at night, and whenever cars came by, we'd all throw them, and then we'd take off running and stuff. Me and my friends eventually in high school, you know, we changed that a little bit, and we started using light bulbs that didn't hurt cars, but they make a little explosion, you know, and we'd run out and throw them at the cars while they were running by. We'd take tennis rackets and use our apple trees and hit them, and one day we hit a cop. We always had to work hard. We lived out in the country. That's how my family was. A lot of the times we lived off soup, beans, and cornbread for days at a time. You know, we ate meat for breakfast, whatever leftovers we had, stuff like that. And whenever we moved in with them, I was about 10 years old whenever I moved in with my grandmother. And, well, for the last time, you know, we moved back and forth many times. But then my stepdad died, so we stayed with her. But we had to work all the time. My uncle was a construction worker. He had his own company. You know, the house we had used to be flat roof house and only a couple rooms, you know, and they made it into a barn roof and added 4 rooms upstairs, and just a ton of work that we always did around the place, including the front room that was all glass. And if I missed school, I had to go to work with my uncle, even at 13 years old, without pay, and work construction with him. So, which I eventually got hired on there and started working with him and actually getting paid. It was $10.50 an hour, but time and a half on weekends, so that was pretty good. But even at a young age, we knew how to build everything and do everything, you know. I remember one time we shoveled like 6 tons is what we measured it out, because we kept taking it to the incinerator. There was a spot in the back of our garage where all the work they had done over decades, they just threw all the trash in there, shingles and everything. So we shoveled all that out in just a couple days into a dump truck that my uncle bought and took it in and to the incinerator, that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to give you a gist of how everything was. We had to split wood since we were little. We'd just have stacks of wood even in the house, you know. But all my uncles were hard people and brawlers, and all their sons that we lived with were troublemakers. So we did everything, you know, shooting bow and arrows at stuff we shouldn't have. Like I said, building bombs and doing stuff like that. Making fires. We got a trampoline eventually. I got into gymnastics for a while. I would do round-offs and front flips and everything off our garage roof onto a pile of rocks. We used to play a game. All the cousins thought it was fun. You know, we all had these real thick ropes, and we'd tie 6 knots on the end of them, and we called it ropes and discs. I don't know if this was something before us or not, but then you take all the really heavy Tupperware lids and stuff, you know, like your grandma used to have, and you go outside, you play ropes and discs, and you're sectioned off in this section, and the goal is to either hit somebody with the disc or wrap your rope around their legs and jerk their legs out from under them. So, I mean, that was kind of fun. We'd play sports in the backyard with no pads. I mean, my cousin broke his ribs, that kind of stuff went on. On the trampoline, we'd get 13 of us together, or more even, and we'd all get on the trampoline and play last man standing. So you had to throw everybody off the trampoline. The last one up there wins. I mean, some shit really went down there. I mean, my cousin like went upside down, had his head in the springs, his legs up like this, literally choking on the springs. And just so many, again, broken ribs, busted skulls on the trampoline. On the trampoline also doing front flips, double front flips out of a maple tree that we had. I used to do that. A lot of stuff, back flips, aerials, all that. Used to do stuff from off the trampoline onto the trampoline. Used to try to skateboard. That doesn't really work out even without trucks. It's really hard to get the skateboard up. Even whenever we were young, my older brother is about 3 years older than me. And my cousins just thought it was hilarious. They'd put us in a corner in the house and put snow gloves on us and tell us to go at it. We'd be sitting there trying to beat each other with these snow gloves on. But we got my cousin back. He was always doing that kind of stuff to us, thought it was hilarious, and one day he was like, come on guys, come at me. And me and my brother just being dumb, we're young, and we're like, hey, all right, this is our plan. We're both gonna kick him in the leg at the same time, you on that side, me on this side, and then we broke his kneecap. We did not know that that was going to happen, obviously. Every time that the family would get together, it was all wrestling. It was all grandma yelling, don't break my china, don't break my good china. Just wrestling in the house, knocking shit over, breaking shit. That's literally the way that we live. Like one of my cousins got in a fight in the driveway with this guy that pulled up, and he took one of those old jacks, the long ones. And he took one of those old jacks while my cousin was walking away and hit him. My cousin literally has a scar where he had to get surgery all the way down his chest, his whole shoulders down. So my cousin grabbed the guy as he was getting in his car. He grabbed him with his left hand, pulled him out, threw him on top of the hood, and just started wailing on him. My uncles literally got in fights there, knocked people through French doors. My grandmother was super mean. She would stab you with forks, throw glass ashtrays at you. She knocked my aunt's boyfriend out with a glass ashtray. Needless to say, I grew up in a lot of cigarette smoke. I used to smoke like 3 packs a day, man. Everybody just sitting around the whole house with nothing but a cloud of smoke. We got a pool table in our foyer there, an 8-foot. Whenever I was young, they stopped doing 8-foot. Now, really, it's either 9-foot or 7-foot. Because it's easier to carry 7-foot in semis and haul them. But got really good at pool throughout my life. Then I wanted to get into music, and my mom got me a guitar for Christmas. We hardly ever had birthdays. She didn't get us anything for birthdays, but she'd go all out on Christmas and have to make up for it over like the next 4 months, because she'd spend thousands of dollars on us on Christmas. But birthdays, might as well not even have a birthday. We never went anywhere. I didn't know what fast food was, Like my friends would take me someplace, I'd be like, I've never been here. They're like, you've never been to Burger King? I was like, no. But we learned how to build and do just about anything on a house. There was a lot of shoveling involved underneath the house. Our basement was a crawl space, but it was huge. We had our hot water heater down there. We used to have to go out and dig tunnels under the thing and lift it up with buckets. We had one of these big grates, underneath the stairwell. And we were just always doing something. A lot of firework mishaps, a lot of broken windows, a lot of everything from all the stuff that we were doing. But I eventually got into music, and I got into music pretty hard, and I started learning the guitar. And then the next year I got a keyboard. And then I learned like the whole song of For Elise. I learned the Turkish March, the Wedding March, a whole bunch of stuff. One of my favorites to play was Hey Jude. It wasn't hard, it was just melodic, and just the structure of it was like such a great song. I also got into mandolin, and I was okay. It would have been easy. It's one of my favorite instruments, really, the sound of it. And then harmonica, and I tried the violin, but I didn't give the violin enough of a shot. It pissed me off. I could hardly get the thing to make a sound, and here I am able to play all this other stuff, and it's easy for me to learn chords. Chords are the same, but the violin pissed me off. Because of my stepdad and always being locked in the room whenever we were younger, me and my brother also became artists. We let that go. I'm not any good. But for my age, I was very good back then. We didn't really have a lot to do. We had to make up stuff to do because we'd spend days in our room, not allowed to come out, especially if he was home. He told my mom if she ever left him for good that he was going to kill her. And after he died and she was going through his things, she found a receipt for his Colt 44, right? No, it's 44. No, the Colt, no. He had different guns. I think it was a 44 Magnum. He bought it the day after she left with a holster. And then he was driving around following her everywhere as she went to work and stuff. But then I started skateboarding, and I got out all that martial arts stuff, luckily, because, I don't know. It seems to me like people that give all their time to that, they grow up weird. At least weird to me, not my style of people. But I started skateboarding, and I wanted to learn, so I learned. And I was out there all day, every day, learning how to skate. And then I got friends that skateboarded. And then we started CKY and Jackass type stuff, knocking each other, rolling each other down hills and garbage cans, jumping off the hoods of cars into bushes, riding on the hoods of cars, even up to 70 miles an hour. Almost our whole group, all 15 or so of us, almost all of them got expelled from high school. I was a little taller than they were. A lot of my friends were short, so they literally called us the Midget Mafia. And I remember the principal calling us on the intercom. He said, will all the members of the Midget Mafia please come to the office? But we wound up getting into a lot of stuff and eventually drinking. I know I was only 160 pounds at 18. I was drinking 30 beers whenever I drank, and often that was every night. After just 1 year of skateboarding, I used to have a video camera and we'd record all this stuff. I had 22 4-hour tapes, but I threw them away whenever I got in church because all the stuff that we did, and all the stuff we said and the cussing and whatnot. So I threw them all away whenever we got in church, but I had 22 tapes full of nothing but jackass stuff. And then me and my brother built ramps in our backyard to jump bikes. I rollerbladed. I played every sport. I was good at every sport: football, baseball, basketball, soccer. Played street hockey with my friends, Played tennis with other friends, played volleyball with other friends, just a whole bunch of stuff. But in those tapes that we had, we would just do donuts in people's yard in broad daylight that we didn't like. I mean, we'd just run off the road and do donuts in their yard and then run. Toilet papering people's houses, Broke the sign down at our intermediate school where we were all skateboarding and jumping on the sign. We were just little hellions. Almost crashed with each other doing donuts in the baseball diamond. This stuff stresses me out thinking about it. But always getting in fights in town. I literally splattered blood all over my friend where I got punched by this guy that was huge. But after he punched me, I rolled his hand up in the car window, and then he started punching me in the back of the head through the back window. And I'm yelling at Zach saying, roll up the window, roll up the window. But I've got his hand stuck in the window, and I was like, Niall, let's go. I was like, take off. So he's running next to the car screaming at that point with his hand trapped in the window. But then a cop was coming down the road pulling somebody else over, and I rolled down the window and he goes tumbling across the ground. Every one of my friends got in a car wreck or arrested. I was lucky enough not to ever happen to me. Never got in a car wreck and was never arrested. Well, I was arrested, I was never booked. I remember we were running from the cops in the little town where I grew up from in one time, and I was like, go, go. Niall's girlfriend's stepdad just moved out of his house there, so his house was empty. And I was like, go, go, go. I was like, go to Steve's house, go to Steve's house. And I jump out of the car while it's moving, and I go and I open the garage door, and his garage is just full of his stuff. And we're talking like a table turned upside down right in the middle of the floor in the garage, and boxes everywhere, and who knows what we destroyed. But I opened that thing for my friend to turn the corner, and I mean, he just ran straight into the he ran over that table. It took like all of us, we called our friends even to get his car off the friggin' table. Our friend invited us over. His parents were out of town, that kind of stuff. And he's like, just make sure that I'm awake and everything before my, man, we were such shits. Make sure I'm awake before morning, we're all getting wasted and stuff. And so everybody leaves. We don't clean anything up. He's passed out in the corner, and we put beers in his hands, and his mom caught him like that. There's too many stories for all this stuff. Whenever Fight Club came out, we actually did Fight Club barefisted. We would go out in my friend's woods and just beat each other. I started living in a party house, guns, knives, you name it. They were on the news sometimes. Lived there while I was working at the car wash, and I sent a guy to the hospital with 38 stitches in his face. I split his face open by punching him, and I beat him up pretty bad. Felt bad for it. He had blood from head to toe. He didn't get me in trouble for it. He came with his bloody hand and tried to shake my hand and say sorry because it was his fault. And then a week later, I got sent to the hospital with 3 fractures in my eye. Almost lost my eye, a hematoma, huge blood from head to toe. I had to get stitches here. The way that guy beat me up, man, there was blood splattered all over the wall. But a lot of fights, everybody sleeping together in every room. You can imagine, a lot of drugs. A lot of my friends did hard drugs. I didn't get into those, but they did. And now a lot of my friends are dead. I remember doing a foot race with my brother one time. Hang on. I was pretty drunk. Me and my brother were hopping fences and throwing the football on the roof and climbing up antennas and jumping down and all that stuff and doing our gymnastics. He was better than me, my younger brother. And we started hopping the fences and kicking over trash cans. And on the way back, I had these ripped jeans on. And he's like, let's race. And I was like, all right. Started racing, stepped on my freaking pants. I was like, oh God. Super wasted. I tried to go into the grass and landed right on the concrete and snapped my arm. I mean, it snapped good, but I was so drunk that I still did stuff. I still jumped the fence holding my arm up like this, and it wasn't until the next day whenever I woke up that I knew how bad it was, but I didn't go to the hospital. I just used my wife's bra at the time and put it over this arm and wrapped it around my neck and used it as a sling. But a couple weeks into that, it was not getting any better, and I couldn't move my hand, and every time I laid down, I'd just have to put a pillow there and just lay my hand down. It was terrible. But then me and my wife were about to do something, and my son walked in and opened the door. And whenever he did, I grabbed the blankets. You know, I didn't want him to see what was going on. And I jumped onto that hand that I broke, and it snapped into place. It snapped back into place, thank God now. But I swear that was worse than the feeling of it breaking. I mean, I started screaming. I was like, get the motherfucker, oh, God. You know, like, but then after the pain went away, I was like, holy shit, I can move my hand again, you know? So that was cool. I remember getting fingerprinted whenever I was like 12 for shooting a car with a CO2 gun at my mom's friend's house. I can't even get into all the stories with me and my friends and the skateboarding and all the stuff that we did and all the crazy stuff and all the illegal stuff. I remember we were jumping railroad tracks, and one of my friends, we stopped. We're not going down the one-way street, you know. And my friend goes to jump this huge railroad track, and a car comes up, and I mean, whenever they hit, his fender went flying. I mean, it was like, poof, like across the thing. He got out, he was like, ah, you know, they like busted out the back window and stuff, and he got out trying to open up the car of the people that he just hit. There was a bunch of old people in it. That was terrible. We were just always little shits. I mean, the electricity went out at school, and we're all in different rooms. Some of us are in the gym, some of us are in the cafeteria, some of us are up here at the drink, some of us are in the library, and as soon as the lights go out, like, we all were like, oh yeah, let's, like, now we can do some shit, you know? And it was only out for a second, I guess, school generator or whatever. But, like, we're all just standing there, like, it was dark, and then we're all like, oh, hey guys, like, all of us are in the hallway getting ready to do some stupid shit. I finally stopped my hellion ways eventually, and, got into multi-level marketing. I used to wear suits every day. I used to wear my Botany 500 overcoat, rent rooms at the library, give presentations, you know. I think I signed 21 people up the first month that I even started this vitamin business. And I started other businesses because of my other uncle who I lived with, the preacher uncle. He was an expert painter. He taught me how to paint. So I started a business like that with another guy up in Ohio, and then by myself. And we just went out and handed out 2,000 business cards in one day. We had some people helping us. We couldn't even keep up with the jobs that they were sending in, man. But no, I was like an expert painter, not one of these guys that just slap paint on the wall. You know, I knew what I was doing and cut in and everything perfectly. You go with the shadow. Most people don't know what they're doing. They don't even know how to load a brush. They don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to use a gun. They don't know anything. If you ever see somebody put tape on a wall, you know, put tape on boards or anything, just tell them to leave. But I started about 8 businesses. There's no trash pickup where I live, so I had a trash pickup business. That was going really well until I moved to Missouri. We had a handyman business here. I started that. My brother helped me with that. What else? We had a moving company here, and that was all right. I was LLC for cabin cleaning, Jester's cleaning here. I lived in Texas a couple times, Louisiana a couple times, South Carolina a couple times, Missouri a couple times. Wasn't really living in South Carolina, more like homeless in South Carolina a couple times. It kind of went a lot of places. It seems unreal whenever I think about it all, whenever I haven't really done anything in the last 4 or 5 years. Used to write lyrics and poetry, wrote my own songs, did a lot of stuff. It seems like everything I can think of I did, and I just gave my all to everything that I did and believed in being the best at everything, which I never really got the best at anything, but I was always good at everything. Started hanging out at a veterans club. Eventually I got really good at pool, like really good. You know, break and run 4 times out of 10 type deal. I got 6th place. I got 2nd place 6 weeks in a row at a place called Monkeys up in Ohio. It shut down because of prostitution and drugs. But they had 12 nice tables in there, 860 Simonis all the way down. I mean, super Aramith Pro balls, great tables, and tons of people. I had to stop playing because I was going for too much in Calcutta. You know, I wasn't a rich person, except the money I was making. I'd make about $400 to $600 just for 2nd place each week. That's how much money was in this, you know. 1st place made over $1,000 almost every time. But Calcutta, they bid on you before you even start, and I started going for like $190. So somebody would buy me for $190 before I even started, and then for me to get half of my winnings, I have to pay half the $190. So it wound up getting too expensive for me to play, so I quit. But this is just about my flesh, you know. I came down here and made a lot of money serving. Well, not a lot. I mean, I made money serving. I made more whenever I started my own paint business down here. That was the most I made. I was making a lot. I was making more every couple days than I was a week serving down here. But serving jobs are pretty lucrative in this area. So I worked at like Olive Garden, and I worked at the Bass Pro Shop. That was cool for the discount on fishing poles and clothes and boots and all that stuff. But well, I worked at the Bass Pro Shop here at 407 in Tennessee, in Kodak, Tennessee by Sevierville. But I didn't actually work in the shop. I worked at Isla Mirada. They changed it to Uncle Buck's now, but it was a restaurant inside the Bass Pro Shop. Been a cashier, been a bag boy, been a stocker, did all that different stuff. But the businesses was really where it was at. Doing your own business makes you a lot more money. I got married whenever I was 18. I was 19, she was 18. Then I left her and finally got a divorce from her like 5 years later. I got married again for 13 years. I've got 4 biological children and 2 stepchildren. And all that was just a little bit about my life. So that's just the flesh part that I wanted to get out of the way. I think it is important for people to know, because, I don't know, it just shows, because they're wondering about you. You know, if you bring a message from God, everybody wonders, who is this guy really? That kind of stuff. I dropped out of high school, forgot about that. But then I went to a little Christian school and got my diploma. My whole flesh life and all the fighting and all the shenanigans actually causes me stress to talk about. I hate it. But life is life, I guess. But yeah, that was the flesh stuff. Just want to get that out of the way. And now I'm going to talk about my spiritual journey, which started whenever I was about 7 years old, with God and the important things. So if you watch this, thanks, but really stay tuned for the next ones. My family were backwoods crazy people, by the way, like for real. And I mean, we used to tie a sled to the back of pickup trucks, and our ditches in Ohio go from flat ground to up, and then we would untie people whenever they got to the ditch and just let them soar across the thing. All my cousins were mechanics and whatnot. They all had these little Ford Pintos, and we did our own demolition derby out in the yard until my cousin's engine literally caught on fire. I mean, it was like caught on fire. He ran inside, and they used to keep those huge buckets of flour and stuff, your grandma, and he ran inside and got that, and they were like dumping shit on it trying to put it out. But my life was full of everything crazy you can imagine, and always somebody getting hurt. Anyway, thanks for watching.